Okay, so we're not actually starting a new time period. We're kind of continuing from where we left off. So we have the reformers, those Protestants, spreading like crazy across Europe. You can see on the map in front of you that within about 35 years, Protestantism had spread across most of Europe. Now, certainly the Protestants were not exclusive, neither were the Catholics in most areas. There is a mixture of Protestant belief and Catholic belief in many areas. And this is not just kind of a, neutral, tolerant, oh, it's okay, we're all Christians kind of thing. There are wars, there are hundreds, sometimes thousands of people getting killed right and left, all over these religious beliefs. The problem is, a lot of these people who are getting killed really aren't quite sure what their religious beliefs are. They're not very clear on the distinctions between Catholic and Protestant. Instead, they know that other guy's different, and they want to kill him because, well, he's a Protestant. Well, why do you want to kill him? What does he believe that offends you? They don't know. They just want to kill him because he's a Protestant. We have this kind of passionate division. And part of the reason Protestantism does spread so quickly is that the Catholic Church is terribly corrupt. We started there in the Renaissance. We talked about that when we talked about the Reformation. There's no question whatsoever that the Catholic Church is corrupt and that there are people in the Catholic Church who are in this for the money. Their motives are not pure. They are not following their vows that they took as a part of the Catholic Church. There is a massive amount of corruption. And the Catholic Church knows that. It's not exactly a secret here. And the Protestants gain a foothold thanks to that internal corruption. But the Catholic Church has a terrible problem, well, several terrible problems with the Protestants. For one thing, the Catholic Church very definitely believes that the Protestants are going to eternal damnation. They really believe the Protestants are unquestionably going to hell. And really, no sarcasm, completely seriously, that upsets the Catholics terribly. Their mission is to save people, and they don't want to see those Protestants dying and going to a miserable afterlife. Number two, as they lose these Protestants in a much more temporal, physical world, they also lose all of their tithe, all of their benefits. They lose all those people in their churches, and the Catholic Church are no fools. They know that they need to win people back. They need to clean up their act. They need to secure their foothold in Europe. And they need to strike back at this Protestant movement that is rising throughout Europe. That movement to strike back is what we call the Counter-Reformation. It is a move on the part of the Catholic Church to counter or go against the Protestant reformers. The Catholic Church wants to restore its supremacy. Actually, what it wants to do is it wants to bring the church back together and have one single unified church. A Catholic Church with a little c, because the word Catholic just means universal. And the Catholic Church was always the universal church up to this point, the only Christian church. They feel very strongly that there was one shepherd, Jesus, and there should be one flock, one church following Jesus. They hate the divisions in the church. They object strongly to the splits started by the Protestants, and they want to bring back and restore the unified church, get rid of the Protestants, and once again bring the Christian church back to be one big family. Now, the Catholics know that one of the first things that they need to do is to clean up their problem with corruption. And in order to do that, they hold a massive series of meetings. Those meetings include most of the bishops, most of the church leaders across Europe. They're called together in an official council meeting, I should say series of council meetings. This lasts for about 20 years. It's a series of meetings. And at these meetings, they address a number of issues. They address a lot of the corruption issues that have made people really angry at them. They address a lot of the problems that they're having with education inside the ranks of the church's leaders. They also put in disciplinary actions, if you do this, then that happens to you. And they actually lay down some very clear separations or delineations between Catholic and Protestant. So there's no longer, I'm going to kill him. Why? Because he's a Protestant. Well, what about him offends you? I don't know. They want to make sure that it is very clearly defined what makes a Catholic, what makes a Protestant, what the difference between the two is. And they want to restore the Catholic Church, reunify everyone, and lay out what beliefs they hold to be different and what beliefs they believe the Protestants are incorrect on. This series of meetings, 20 years, most of the church leaders, comes to be called collectively, all of the meetings come to be called the Council of Trent. Now, again, this is a series of meetings over 20 years. You hear Council of Trent and you're like, oh, it's one big meeting. No, it's not. It's a lot of little meetings. And during those meetings, the church lays out a lot of things. There are a few things here that I want to talk about that the church lays out. These are not huge issues that are going to be majorly, but you should know at least some of the differences that are laid out between Catholic and Protestant here. All right. First of all, the Catholic Church advocates or approves the deuterocanonical books. Now there's a $10 word. That's what we call the Apocrypha. There are a series of books of Jewish history, things that happened to the nation of Israel between the end of the traditional Old Testament in the Bible, the First Covenant, and the beginning of the New Testament, or what Christians would accept as the New Covenant, all right? Those books of Jewish history are accepted within the Catholic belief. Those apocryphal books, those books between the Old and New Testament, are accepted by the Catholics. They are rejected by the Protestants. The Protestants say that they contain useful Jewish history, but they do not contain prophecy about Jesus, so they do not include them in their canon of the book of the Bible. All right. The Catholic Church also sanctions the Vulgate. That's St. Jerome's translation of the Bible from Greek and Hebrew into Latin. Again, I know this is dumb to some of you, but I have to say it anyway. I'm assuming you guys know the Bible was not written in English. Hello. The Bible was written, the Old Testament was written in Hebrew, since it was a Jewish set of books. The New Testament was written in Greek, because it was written under the Roman Empire, and educated people under the Roman Empire spoke Greek. St. Jerome, we talked about him before, translated the Bible from Hebrew and Greek into Latin, which was the common language of Rome, what they would have called the vulgar language of Rome. And that translation by St. Jerome became known as the Vulgate. There were many other translations by the point that the Council of Trent met, some of them in German, some of them in English, some of them in French. And the Council of Trent rejects all of those translations and says the only true translation of the Bible is the Vulgate, St. Jerome's original translation into Latin. All other translations must be based on the Vulgate. They also say that the only way to get into heaven, the only way to be justified, is through faith and works. Martin Luther said it was only through faith. The Council of Trent says the Catholic Church does not accept that teaching. Faith on its own is not enough. You must have faith and do good deeds if you want to successfully get into heaven. They also reaffirm all of their sacraments. Luther only accepted 2. He kicked all the other ones to the curb because Luther believed that only 2 of them could be found in the Bible, and based on the Protestant idea, sola scriptura, Luther only accepted the 2 sacraments that were in the Bible. The Catholic Church also accepts transubstantiation. We talked about this very briefly before. That's the idea that when communion is served and they take the bread and the wine and it is blessed, that it actually in essence becomes the body and blood of Jesus. The Catholic Church accepts that it is actually transformed or transubstantiated into the body and blood of Jesus. Many Protestant sects only believe that it is symbolic. They don't believe there's an actual transformation that takes place. there is a very strong belief that the Catholic Church affirms here in ordination by the church. Now, that's a big deal. I want to emphasize that one in particular to you because we're talking about church organization here, church power structure. Remember, one of the big things that Luther did that got him in such deep doo-doo was that he rejected the power of the Pope and church councils. Here, the church, the Catholic Church, is saying that the only way to be in charge, the only way to be a priest, the only way to be a bishop, the only way to be a cardinal is for that order to come down the food chain from the papacy. Okay, so we're going back to that giant pyramid scheme here. Power comes from the Pope downward into the church, and you need to get your power, your authority from the Pope. Big deal. All right. Affirmation of celibacy. Can't get married. Remember, Protestants like Martin Luther do get married in many cases. There's also an affirmation of purgatory, a holding area, separation from God until you have had your bad deeds or your omissions purged. Belief in saints, and a belief in relics which give off grace or the power of God. Now, the church affirms those things as part of their doctrine, but they also know that they have other issues. If you remember, when we talked about the Reformation, I told you that they have problems because a lot of the priests don't really speak Latin. They've actually memorized what they're supposed to say in church phonetically, and they're just pronouncing what they memorized. They actually have no clue what they're saying. The problem becomes that more and more people in their audience, people actually going to church, do speak Latin, and they know when the guys mispronounce the words, they know when they screw something up, and so the church puts forth a huge push to educate the priests. They don't want any more uneducated embarrassments. They want to make sure that the priests know what they're talking about, that they speak Latin, and so a mandate comes down from the Council of Trent that priests be educated according to certain rules. There is the affirmation of the power structure of the church with the Pope at the top, cardinals, bishops, and so on, different levels. And there's a refocus on the divine mission. That's a fancy way of saying that if they catch somebody having an orgy, they're going to throw them out of the church. They are kicking out people who got into the church to make a buck. Basically what they're doing is they're trying to return to a point where the people who are in charge, the people who are actually the ministers of the church, the priests and so on, are really there because they feel a calling to serve God. They're not there just because they want to find a way to make money or they don't want to work for their brother. They're trying to make sure that these people are focused on the power of God and on worshiping God. They want to restore the church back to being really something, an organization that is truly in the service of God. Now, in doing that, they're wanting to bring the church back together. They're trying to unify the church. One shepherd, one flock. We should have one church, not all these different, we don't need franchises, basically. They don't want little franchise, little Protestant, different brand names, all the little denominations that are springing up are just making them crazy. Everyone needs to come back together and play together again. They also definitely want to ensure the loyalty of the wealthy and powerful, the princes, people who matter, like, you remember Charles V, dude who owns like half the planet? Yeah. They want those guys to be very loyal Catholics, and they want to bring everybody back into the fold. Now, that means that the church at the Council of Trent is going to look at what tools, what weapons do they have. They're going to open up their toolbox and they're going to find out what do they have that they can use to get princes, wealthy and powerful people to either come back or stay with the one true Catholic Church in their view. And what can they do to get the message out to people that the Protestants don't have anything the Catholic Church doesn't have. That we represent the same divinity, the same benefits that the Protestants have. Don't believe their propaganda. Come back to us. Come back to the one true church. Catholic Church looks at their toolkit and they realize that in the end they have two major advantages over the Protestants. There are two big things that the Catholics really can do, two things that they have that the Protestants don't. The first one is education. The Catholic Church is the organization that stayed around when the Roman Empire fell. The Catholic Church is the organization that has been keeping education, knowledge, running the universities. They have the knowledge and wisdom saved from time. Now, you might say, wait, hang on, like Luther, the Protestants, these guys, they emphasize God helps those who help themselves. They emphasize reading and writing. They want people to... So what are the Catholics doing? What do you mean they're the ones who have education? The Catholic Church has the tradition of education, and they have the, what do I say? They have the organizations, they have the infrastructure in place. So in other words, they have universities, they have schools that are already have been established for several hundred years. Yes, the Protestants do advocate education, but the Protestants don't have that history, that tradition, those libraries hidden away. One of the major advantages the Catholics have with this education is because of the dude on your screen right here. This guy named Ignatius Loyola is a Spanish nobleman who founds a group of monks, an order called the Society of Jesus, or the Jesuits. Now, Loyola is a brilliant guy. He's a genius. Okay, if he were around today, the dude would be in Mensa. There's no question whatsoever about his intellect. But Loyola's more than a smarty pants. Loyola has more than brains. Loyola has a gift. Loyola is a teacher. Now, that may sound weird, okay? But you guys have experienced this at some point. I know you have in your educational career. You have had, I have had, one of those teachers who is really smart, okay? They're absolutely flipping brilliant. They know their stuff. But when they try to explain it to you, nothing makes sense because they don't have the gift of explaining it. I had a physics teacher like that. I think I barely passed that course. Guy was amazing. He could like do equations and plot points, do all this amazing junk. But when he tried to explain to us what he was doing, oh my gosh, nothing, okay? Loyola was not that dude. Loyola had a gift for teaching, for explaining, for getting information across effectively and getting people interested in what he had to say. The Catholic Church saw Loyola as a treasure, okay? Loyola forms this Jesuit society, this Society of Jesus, this monastic order, and he begins to get other incredibly well-educated, intelligent teachers to join the Society of Jesus. Not just anybody can join the Jesuits. You have to be intelligent and you have to be a capable teacher before you can join the Jesuits. These Jesuits become one of the most powerful, effective teaching groups in all of Europe. And here's the deal. Jesuits offer their services as teachers, counselors, confessors, and military advisors, they're educated on all ways, to princes, wealthy merchants, and nobles, absolutely free. Yep. They'll give you all those services for free. The only thing that you have to do is be a good and loyal Catholic. Now, Jesuits in general, and Ignatius Loyola in particular, are more than a little bit loyal to the Catholic Church. I think we'd call them somewhere between fanatical and, oh my gosh, he's got a bomb, okay? These guys are unquestioningly loyal to the church. What you see on your screen is a quote by Loyola. It says that we may be altogether of the same in mind and in conformity with the church herself. If she shall have defined anything to be black, which to our eyes appears to be white, we ought in like manner to pronounce it to be black. For we must undoubtedly believe that the Spirit of our Lord Jesus Christ and the Spirit of the Orthodox Church, his spouse, by which we are governed and directed to salvation, is the same. In other words, Loyola believes that the Spirit of Jesus is the same Spirit that's in the Church. The Pope is divinely inspired. The Pope is acting on the orders of God, and by following the Pope's orders, you are following God's orders. He says if you see something and it looks white to you, the church says it is black, Dude, you should be willing to die for the fact that it's black. No question asked. Total loyalty to the church. Whatever the church says is right. Don't question, don't doubt, follow. That kind of total faith and loyalty is what makes the Jesuits such a wonderful opportunity for the Catholic Church, because these totally, blindly loyal men are brilliant teachers, and they're the guys that are going out and acting as teachers and advisors to kings and princes. With that kind of loyalty, these guys are a powerful tool for keeping the wealthy and powerful on your side. They act as educators. And when they do that, of course, they include in their curriculum all sorts of material that encourages the children to be Catholic and teaches them why Catholic is the only way. So if you are acting as a free teacher to the child of a wealthy and powerful prince, guess what? That child is going to grow up to be a good Catholic. You're guaranteeing the next generation will follow in the footsteps of the current generation. As confessors, they know the deepest, darkest secrets of these princes and nobles. Now, of course, there's a privilege. They would never be able to tell anyone else, but they still know, and they still can shape their advice and ensure their loyalty based on what they know from confession. And, of course, they also help out with military strategy and with counseling in terms of finances, with terms of national decision making. And they can help to control nationalism, that problem that we had with Henry VIII in England. They can tone down the king's desires to be independent and encourage them to remain under the power of and under the blessing of the Pope in Rome and the only Holy Roman Catholic Church. One of the easiest ways for me to explain to you the divide that's going on between religious and political, sacred, secular, is actually by showing you the work of El Greco. Now, really, the dude's name is not El Greco. If you know even like the most basic Spanish, you should be able to figure out that El Greco translates to, the Greek. No, his real name is not the Greek. His real name is actually Dominicus Theotokopoulos, which is a mouthful and a half, which is probably why they called the dude the Greek. Now, El Greco is interesting in that he's a court painter. He works for the King of Spain. And El Greco is a master of two different styles. One is portrait painting, like Hans Holbein, very realistic. The other is mannerism, very exaggerated and emotional. And El Greco frequently puts those two styles side by side or chooses to use them for specific purposes. The best example I can show you of that is the painting you're looking at right now, the Burial of Count Orgaz. It's his name, deal with it, not my fault. Count Orgaz was a wealthy patron of the church in Spain, and upon his death, the church honored him by paying for an elaborate painting by Dominicus Theotokopoulos, a.k.a. El Greco, honoring his assumption or his being taken up into heaven. Now, Count Orgaz is the dead guy in armor in the lower center of the picture. He's being lifted up by two saints. They're the guys wearing the golden robes down there. Saint on your left is Saint Stephen, supposedly the first Christian martyr, stoned to death for his belief. Dude on the right is Saint Augustine, one of the great early church fathers deeply involved in the Council of Nicaea. The two of them are lifting the body of Count Orgaz, and they're going to take him up into heaven. What I really want you to notice here, I want you to notice that there are two halves to this painting. There's a top half and a bottom half. The top half is heaven. And when you look at heaven, it's a funky place. You'll see a lot of characteristics of mannerism, the exaggeration for emphasis. Strange swirling pictures, bodies that seem slightly out of proportion or out of perspective, clothes that seem to melt into clouds. There's no real sense of realism up there in the upper level because that represents heaven. It's mannerist. It's separate from ordinary everyday life. Below the division, the lower half of the painting, that's the reality part. If you look in the background, you're going to see a whole bunch of little black and white penguins back there. Really, those are members of the Spanish court attending the funeral. And actually, El Greco does a truly amazing version of the members of the Spanish court. Historians can actually tell you who everybody in that lineup actually is, because the portraits are so accurate and so realistically painted. He was very much as good as Hans Holbein in England as a portrait artist. So what's the overall story here? Why do we have the two halves? Top half's really weird, bottom normal portraits, all that kind of junk. Why does it look like that? Well, it looks like that simply because it reflects what's going on in the world. There's starting to be this split, this division. Oh, religious stuff gets treated that way. Oh, yeah, but like kings and quote-unquote real stuff gets treated this way. There's this split between sacred and secular with which the church is very uncomfortable. Let me show you again Domenicus Theotokopoulos, all right? These two images are actually portraits done by El Greco. The one on your left is a portrait of a cardinal. I know, he's wearing a totally fabulous outfit. That red, by the way, is why they're called cardinals, the birds. They're called after these guys in their fabulous red outfits. But if you look at his face, look at the guy himself. I mean, today, if you took off the silly red outfit and you put him in like a doctor's coat, you would totally trust that guy. He looks like a scientist or a doctor. It's a very realistic portrait. The actual image of the person is very simple, very realistic, very sober. On the right-hand side, you're going to see, again, a nobleman painted by El Greco. He is simple, realistic. He might look a little constipated, but other than that, he's very well portrayed. He's a little creepy, actually, because if you move around, like if you lean to the left side of your screen, you lean to the right side of your screen, you're going to see that his eyes follow you no matter where you go. He's painted, actually, to create that illusion of the gaze following you. These two guys are very realistic, very simply painted. They were painted as portraits. Real world, this is how El Greco paints it. Okay, now, when El Greco paints religious stuff, oh, it doesn't look anything like this. Instead, this is El Greco's version of religious figures. Please notice all the way over to your right-hand side, that guy with the long brown cape on, that's St. Francis. And yes, his fingers are creepy as all get out. These figures almost seem emaciated. They have deep shadows. Their proportions are a little bit off. They seem almost unearthly, extended in a way. Why on earth are they like that? Why are they so weird? Why are they different? Because they're spiritual. And El Greco is beginning to represent, to show this sacred-secular divide. He's painting his portraits, his quote-unquote real people, as being very different from his religious people. Again, this is El Greco's Garden of Gethsemane. This is Jesus in his final moments as the soldiers are coming to get him and arrest him. His disciples are sleeping over there beneath the angel on your left in a womb-like image. This image is very Mannerist. It's weird. It's freaky. Things are distorted. We're using exaggeration for emphasis to get a feeling across that El Greco wants to create. Why does he paint it this way? Because he's dealing with a religious subject, not a real world subject. And the Catholics don't want that separation. They don't want religion treated differently from reality. They very much are interested in bridging that gap, in reminding kings and princes that education, knowledge, tradition has long come through the Catholic Church. They don't want this division between church and state that is beginning to show up. Instead, they want to create and restore a sense of unity again. They don't like El Greco's way of doing things. They want to restore unity. For the the Catholic Church here in the Counter-Reformation as they're trying to strike back, basically get people back from the Protestant cause. The Catholic Church wants to remind people that the Church still has the ultimate truth. These little split-offs, these Protestants, they don't have anything special. God is still very active in the Church. A lot of people have a view in this time period, in the 1500s here, that the Protestants are closer to God. There is this idea, the Protestants are spinning this, they're promoting the idea that, oh, if you're with the Catholic Church, well, you have to pray for a priest, and the priest prays to the saints for you, and then the saints will talk to God for you. It's like a four-step process. If you come with us, if you come with the Protestants, you can talk to God directly. We encourage people to pray directly to God. The Catholic Church is not cool with that. They're like, no, okay, no. The Protestants are like totally not telling you the truth here, okay? We are not telling you that God is like far away. No. God is nearby, and, you know, God can touch the lives of ordinary people. You know those people from the Bible? They were really like you, except God touched them and made them special. The Catholic Church is going to more and more strongly focus on God interacting with and touching the lives of ordinary people to make them special. More and more they're going to focus on promoting to compete with the Protestants. They want the people to feel as if they have a direct line to God. They don't want them to go with the Protestants because the Protestants are promising this personal relationship. Oh no. The Catholic Church wants to remind people that they were helping people have a personal relationship with God for like hundreds of years before the Protestants showed up. They want to draw people back. In that interest, you're going to see a really big change in the artwork and in what is portrayed in the artwork. For example, you remember Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper? Yeah, let me show you the Last Supper during this time period. There you go. This is Tintoretto's Last Supper in 1594. It looks just a little bit different than Leonardo da Vinci's Last Supper. If you remember Da Vinci's Last Supper was all about math, balance, and precision. Here, let's take a look. There you go. Here's Leonardo da Vinci's Renaissance Last Supper. You got 6 apostles split through, or 12 apostles, there we go, split 6 and 6 on either side. Each group of 6 split into triangular shapes of 3. Jesus is right smack dab in the mathematical center. Now, Da Vinci actually sets Jesus apart from everyone else in the picture on purpose. He is here painting the moment where Jesus tells his apostles that one of them is going to betray him. One of them is going to sell him out. One of them is a traitor. And, of course, as soon as Jesus announces that, all of his apostles, all of his followers start going, oh my gosh, is it me? No, it's not me. Is it you? Oh, maybe it's you. There's this total chaos moment. And Da Vinci wants to emphasize the fact that Jesus is sitting in the middle of that chaos moment, completely unmoved, stable, unaffected. He's set off from the other figures, slightly separated with a little bit of space around him, as the physical and mental center of this image. Now, as we move into the Counter-Reformation, it isn't that way anymore. Okay, now look at Tintoretto's Last Supper. Jesus is not going to be in the mathematical center of the painting. In fact, you might have to look around for a minute to even find Jesus. You'll be able to identify him as the guy who's glowing the most. You actually have him off-center in the painting, and rather than being separated from everyone around him, kind of mathematically divided out as this central, strong, peaceful anchor, instead you have Jesus actually interacting directly with his disciples. There's no strong sacred secular divide here. If you look at the top of the room, you're going to see angels, smoke angels, swooping in from the smoke around the lamps at the ceiling line. They share space with the people in the main part of the painting. The people in the painting are not all wearing Bible clothes. Many of them are actually wearing clothes from the time period in which Tintoretto is painting this. They're wearing contemporary clothes. Why? Well, because the church doesn't want that division. The division you saw with El Greco. They don't want that sacred-secular divide. They're fighting against that. They don't want this division where the king has to be over the church, or there has to be a separation and the church and politics. No. They want everything to come together and be reunited. And they want to bring people back to the church. They use their tools to bring people back to the church. We talked, they use the Jesuits. They use that education, that assistance, counseling, advising to bring people back to the church in hopes of reunifying the church and making sure the wealthy and powerful stay Catholic and provide an example to others. But the Catholics have a second amazing tool or weapon that they use in their fight against the Protestants. Remember, the Protestants are iconoclasts. They don't like religious imagery. They don't have pictures in their churches. And the Catholics know one very important thing about us as human beings. We like pictures. We like pictures a lot. Everything's better with pictures. The Catholics know the Protestants don't have pictures in their churches. They're busy smashing pictures. Well, what about the people who aren't literate? What about the people who want those pictures? The Catholics, they're not iconoclastic. They love art. In fact, they have a rich tradition of art. And the Catholic Church is going to pull out its second tool in the battle against the Protestants. And that tool is art. The Catholics are actually going to introduce a new style of art here. It's called Baroque art. Baroque art is a very particular style that reflects the values of the Catholic Church. It is a style of art that focuses on drama. It's all going to be very dramatic, eye-catching art. Basically what they're going for is, in our terms, in modern terms, you know, when you're fast-forwarding on your DVR because you taped a program and you're skipping through the commercials, and you actually go, hey, wait a minute, what was that? And you rewind to see what was going on in that commercial. That's what the Catholics want people to do. They want people to see this artwork as they're going by and actually go back and say, hey, what was that? Hey, I got to go look at that again. They want it to be dramatic enough to catch attention and get people interested. In that drama, they're going to use a method called chiaroscuro, which is an awesome Italian word that means shade and light, light and shadow. Chiaroscuro, those extremes of light and shadow, are used to highlight or spotlight dramatic moments, to bring out the important stuff in the painting and make it pop at you. And those images are also intended to be caught in a moment. They're intended to show strong emotion and be caught in movement, not simply posed, not languid. You're no longer going to have lounging figures like Adam and Michelangelo's creation of man. Instead, you're going to have figures that are active, powerful, passionate, caught in a moment of action and strong emotion. Now, the Catholic Church is going to seek out artists that can create this new style in hopes that it will attract people and bring them back to the church. But they need people who are themselves passionate, who can portray or convey that strong emotion, and who understand the idea of God touching the lives of ordinary people. They want artists who understand ordinary people.